So, another topic that shows up a lot under numbing and medicating, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, is trauma and the relationship with trauma and medicating. Um, in my opinion, don't Google this because it's an amberism, is almost sibling like. When I suffer a trauma in my backstory, it's not only held in my mind as memories, but it's stored in my body. For so many of us, it's stored in our joints and our tendons and our ligaments. And when we have that unresolved trauma that we carry for so many years, it manifests into physical limitations. For so many of us, that looks like autoimmune disease, that looks like anxiety disorder, gut issues, lots of different physical manifestations, hypertension, high blood pressure. And research has proven that there is a connection between the emotional health and the physical health. So when you think of trauma, I want to create a relationship with trauma and numbing and medicating because so many of us, me included, wanted to create a physical boundary to try to solve the problem around trauma. Like, I'll just never see that person again and I'll be okay. Or I'll just never go there again. Or I won't do family functions again. Or um, I'll leave that college and go to a different college with the attempt and the hope that when I leave that place or those people, that the trauma will go away. And what happens is it's stored, it's energy. And that energy doesn't just go away, it has to be transmuted. So the relationship with numbing and medicating comes into play when we make an attempt to avoid, flee, run away, dissociate. Numbers and medicators become vital because in order to cope with unresolved trauma, I've got to stuff it. I've got to do something with it. I can't allow myself to be embodied and my heart voice to be connected to my head voice because if I do that, I'm aware of how much pain my body is in emotionally and physically. And what I find really interesting is that the body can't recognize the difference in emotional pain and physical pain. And emotional pain manifests into physical pain. So the longer I hold my trauma, the longer it exists in my body without transmuting that energy, the more damage it does. And the more need I have for numbers and medicators. The relationship with numbers and medicators also intensifies because maybe you've noticed on TV shows or movies, a lot of times they'll talk about Xanax or benzos and how somebody was prescribed this and they used it really well for a while. And then for some reason, they just ended up taking more. And then they needed to take it a couple of times a day. And then they needed to take a couple of times a day. And before you knew it, then they started mixing it with alcohol. When it comes to numbers and medicators and our window of tolerance, we need more and more and more in order to numb and push down and not feel. We need more to silence our body. And that's also why some people that started with exercise might end up with food, or started with shopping may end up with opiates and pain medication. Oftentimes, there is a physical pain that creates a relationship with a painkiller, but then we need more and more and more because what it's actually relieving is not the root. It's only addressing the symptom, not the problem. So the same happens with anxiety medication. I need more and more and more because it's not addressing the root problem. And for so many of us, the anxiety that exists in our body is the fear and the powerlessness we felt during a childhood trauma. So as adults, we suffer from an anxiety disorder, and we can use and take a lot of medications that for so many people are necessary. Absolutely not stating that medications don't help or support. They just don't resolve the root problem. They help a symptom. So when it comes to numbing and medicating, there's a really close relationship with trauma. And in order for trauma to live in the body in the same form as it was manifested, we have to use numbers and medicators. When we start to heal that trauma, the numbers and medicators start to go away. So I really hope this was helpful, and I hope it helps you consider doing more healing or what being curious about what healing is left to do.